April 17th, 2007.
The CPI report, Child Protection in Iowa, brought to you by Vocal, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program on Mediacom Channel 15. It airs Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, and again the program is repeated on Wednesday evening at 9:30. You can email us at Vocal Iowa, VOCALIOWA at mchsi.com. My number is 276-3956, and John's number is 282-2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls is my co-host,
John Harvey, and this is the CPI report. CPI stands for Child Protection in Iowa. There's two major parts of our mission. One is to influence public policy as it relates to child protection issues, and secondly, we attempt to help people on a one-on-one basis who may be looking for hints or help with their problems with the Department of Human Services and the juvenile court, and there's a lot of those types of incidences, and sometimes it helps to have somebody who has had a little bit of background in that to assist you. We're not attorneys, so we do not hold ourselves out to practice law before the bar. If you need an attorney, it's better to engage an attorney, not to go to someone and have them do attorney work for you. But we can give you some good hints because we are familiar with the law. We're familiar with the way that the Department of Human Services performs, and sometimes we can give you hints that will assist you in warding off any adverse effects of the Department of Human Services. You know, in my experience, it's been that, and you probably know this also, that an inventor looks for a need that is prevalent in the society. When he fills that need, he becomes an inventor, and he gains reward for having solved a problem for which there is a need. In the child abuse arena, the way they accomplish that is to show that children are being abused in great numbers, and then run to their aid with all kinds of help, such as therapists and the shrinks and all kinds of healthcare professionals and so forth, and all kinds of advice. And advice is handed out by people who may never have even had children. We have a system that is built in such a way as to fill a need that is manufactured. So you manufacture the need, you find the resources to meet that need that will fill your pockets, and you have made everybody happy except members of all of the families. So we've got a terrorist type of plot going on. I think that if the kind of plot that is going on was accomplished by a foreign nation, we would have declared war long ago. And those who are not cognizant of what is going on is certainly not paying attention. I'm going to have Don introduce a guest on today's program who's been here before, but who has some additional information to give to us. I don't say share because that's a socialist type of term, but she has some additional information to bring to our attention regarding this gigantic department that is tearing at the fabric of our families. Don?
We have a Des Moines woman that's come back on our program to talk about the Department of Human Services and a class action lawsuit that she is pushing very hard to get on file. And I've been working with her for the last 6 months. She's very knowledgeable. At this time, I'm going to bring on Echo.
Hi, how is everyone doing today?
Great. Glad to have you, Echo.
I'm glad to be back.
You've been working on a lot of statistics, seeing what DHS has been doing with the funding money. Have you got a comment on that?
I have a lot of comments. Unfortunately, I couldn't touch on everything in the last show. There's just so much information to cover with DHS. One of the things that people in Iowa may not be aware of is that currently in the United States there are 31 states mounting class actions against their state's Department of Human Services. They don't all have the same name, but they all function in the same way. Because the Child Protective Services is invading every American's life. And John had said earlier, if those who are not cognizant of the DHS, the way they operate in Iowa, I'd like to take his statement one step further. That means you put yourself at risk of being one of DHS's statistics if you do not make yourself knowledgeable about what can happen to your family.
That not only includes the parents, but also grandparents should have a major concern in this.
Absolutely. Grandparents, and teach your children to say, I will not answer your questions without my parents here. Teach your children never, ever, ever, ever to do, even if a school official or somebody that a school official allows in the school, never take your clothes off for anybody else, and have your child practice with you. Have somebody come into the home and say, you know, your mom says it's okay. Will you please take your pants off for me so that I can just be sure you're okay? And teach your child to respond, no, I will not do anything unless my mom or dad are here.
They should be treated like a stranger. I understand
That's absolutely
that
correct.
children are supposed to shy away from strangers.
Exactly, and DHS pretend that they are not the stranger when they are doing this to your children. We covered a little bit of the pie charts on the last program. Can you go ahead and bring those up again?
Okay.
I wanted to address, let's see, there's a pie chart up in the right-hand corner. There you go. That one shows us how a huge majority of the funding in Iowa goes to out-of-home placement care. That means that they direct more of the money in Iowa to putting the children out of their homes than they do to keeping the children with their families. DHS has made public statements to the contrary. This is off of the DHS website that shows that they do fund more of out-of-home placement of the children. This is something that needs to be thought about in every family. If DHS comes into your life, look at this pie chart. This is the statistic that shows what the chances of you being allowed to keep your child are going to be. You are more likely to have your child removed than kept at home. Another statistic, which was below, we brought it up last time, directly below that one, is that the Department of Human Services gets more of their funding for the agency than they do for the children in out-of-home placement or adoption. They administrative care gets a quarter or a little over a quarter of the funds in Iowa, and the funds that Iowa gets is last year was $96 million from the federal government, but we don't have an answer what other means. But in any case, less than 50% of the money is going for the children, and there's a problem when your administration is running that inefficiently. They have an interest, obviously, in keeping the system going when the administration is getting $50 million just to be an administration.
Wow, that's a lot of money. Most parents never see a penny of that, do they?
No. And the children in out-of-home placement in Iowa, last year, there were about 5,500. And those children adopted were just shy of 500. I believe it was around 485. That's a small number. That's 6,000 altogether. And where is the $96 million going? That's not going to the kids.
And I'm guessing also you could come up with another pie chart where there's more federal money going into the Attorney General to fight against the parents. And the court or the county attorney, prosecutor, all our taxpayer money is going out to fight against parents. Echo?
Well, yeah, this is one of the huge conflicts of interest in our court system in Iowa, because when the citizens of Iowa come up against a problem, somebody's murdered in your family, or somebody has robbed your store, the person you contact is the Attorney General. He's there to represent the citizens of Iowa. When DHS steps into your life and they send you a report that says, we've decided that you're founded for abuse based on a couple of minutes of interviews with you, and then a whole bunch of people you may not have even met who have said, well, yeah, she's an abuser, or he is an abuser. When you go to appeal that case, you appeal it to the Attorney General's office. In court, after your appeal has been granted, the Attorney General then turns around and represents DHS.
Hold it, that's
You've
a
just
conflict.
stepped into the enemy's camp. So there's nobody that you can appeal to in Iowa and say, this is unjust. I was put on a list with no hearing, no judge, no evidence presented. I was not allowed to refute the report, and somebody I don't even know has decided or determined that I'm an abuser. Can you please help me? And he says, well, I can't help you. I represent them. So the legal system is messed up there. When you can't take a state agency and hold them accountable for their action. And by the way, DHS is immune, statutorily immune in Iowa. However, when an agency or a government official or any person in office commits fraud knowingly, they lose their immunity, which is what happened just recently in Iowa regarding the touch play, which was a lottery plan. And the state Supreme Court did say, no, the officials are not allowed immunity in this case. So the case has moved forward.
I had a personal issue on the conflict of interest of attorneys you were talking about. In my case, 20 years ago, I hired an attorney to represent me. He happened to be a partner to the county attorney, and he handled part of the case. And then 8 months later, DHS filed a China action against me, and guess who the prosecuting attorney was? It was the county attorney who I'd done business with. And the Bar Association, later, when I complained, they slapped his hands and said he shouldn't have done that. But that's history.
In the meantime, you've lost your children,
Correct.
and he represented both parties, which is a severe conflict of interest. I did want to put up another chart here. We covered it a little bit, but we didn't really get to cover it in depth. This is Iowa's, the funding that Iowa got for adoptive care in 2003. If you want to kind of scan through that list slowly, you'll see that very, very, very few states got $1 million. Very few states. There were approximately, if I remember correctly, 4 or 5 states that got over $1 million. Now that's out of 50 states in the United States. Iowa somehow managed to snag more than $1 million for its adoptive incentive program, which Adopt Saturday or adopt children out of foster care. That number really strikes me as a bizarre number to see when you compare population-wise that Iowa has 3 million people and New York has 20 million people, and New York only garnered a little over $3 million. Why is Iowa getting more money? And then you have to look at the director's incentive to bring in money to DHS in Iowa. Kincannon did the same thing in Maine when he was in Maine. He was under investigation. And this is something that the public needs to know. In Maine, when Kincannon was director of their DHS, and he called it DHS in Maine also, he was under a state investigation for his actions as a DHS director because he did precisely in Maine what he's doing in Iowa right now. Iowa then turned around when he was searching for a job while he was under investigation and hired him. And Maine just now is beginning to recover from the damages of what his reign in over the DHS in Maine did to that state.
But the parents will never recover from what he did to them.
When you've lost your child, your life is you cannot replace a child. People think that having more babies might make up for that. You can never, ever, ever replace a child in any parent's heart.
We had
or a parent in any child's heart.
We had some parents come to us, a couple came to us, and they had lost their child, termination of parenting rights, and their court-appointed attorney was so nice to them to tell her to have another baby. And guess what they did with the next baby? You got an idea, Echo?
Well, in Iowa, the law allows for one child has been terminated, if you've had your rights as a parent terminated with one child, they don't even have to take you through the court system with any other subsequent children. They automatically are allowed to remove all children from your home.
In this case, I think they spent 3 months, giving the parents a glimmer of hope before they TPR'd them. It was over.
Well, what's really, really, really sad about that is what may have happened in the first instance, may being the key word, because there might not have been anything when they terminated the parents' rights. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen with subsequent children. Parents get off of drugs. Parents quit drinking. Parents financially set themselves up so that they're better able to care. They go back to school and get an education and get a better job. They stabilize, and it doesn't mean that you're going to harm future children. And I disagree with a system that does not allow a person the opportunity to be heard in court on each incident. If a murderer has murdered more than one person, he is not tried in court for all of them at the same time. And he is not determined to be the murderer of every person unaccounted for based on one court finding of guilty as a murderer. So why is it a family if they are determined to be unfit as a parent for one child is suddenly unfit for every single child out there? There's a problem with that system.
Okay, you got another chart to refer to?
I do. This one, I think John Harvey wanted to help touch on a little bit here. This one is the report from the DHS statistics again. They love to use their own statistics because they're, this is their statistics, so let's explain them well.
That has to be the truth then.
It doesn't have to be the truth.
Oh.
Because you'll see shortly how the numbers change. This is the number, the end, top row at the end shows the number of actual calls or reports to DHS, which is 28,000. It's at top above total. There you go. It's over 24,000 in the year 2006. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. That number has gone down over 10,000 reports. The average in the past, in the early 2000s, was 35 to 37,000 calls a year were received by DHS. Well, in the early 2000s, we were having between 10 and 12,000 foundings of the reports. When you take 12,000 and you divide it into 36, it's 1 in 3 families were founded for those reports. We look at these reports now, and there's 24,000 people being reported. The foundings of reports based on this one, the report foundings is 9,000. It's just a little over 9,200. That statistic, which is at the bottom of this page, maybe it's at the bottom of this one, I'm sorry, means that 37% of cases that are reported are founded. This is very significant because in our nationwide, and this is according to a former director of the National Child Abuse, I'm sorry, I don't know the full name of it, but he, have the paper here, there we go. Let's see, it was Dr. Douglas Besheroff, and he was with
Is that National Clearinghouse?
the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect.
Okay.
He was the former director. Sorry, it took me a bit to find that.
Uh-huh.
And according to him, when he testified before Congress regarding the problems with their funding law, CAPTA, nationwide, the foundings of reports is at a 10% level. So we're looking at roughly 4 times more than every state in the U.S. Iowa is founding reports. Now then when you look at this chart here, at the bottom, you will see that the founded cases of abuse in Iowa is over 14,000. Well, now that statistic changes from almost 40% to almost 60%. We have between 4 and 6 times the amount of foundings by our DHS, our very zealous workers in DHS. You got to give them credit for working hard. As in other states. So, this is truly a witch hunt in Iowa. It's literally the Salem witch hunt. Taking those numbers, and again on the DHS website, it breaks down what races, what the percentage of races are that go into foster care where the children are removed. Under the blacks or African Americans in Iowa, they have 18% of their children are removed population-wise in Iowa. Well, this is significant because African Americans represent 3% of the population in Iowa. That shows that they are now targeted 6 times more than the already excessive rates in Iowa. We were just going over some other research. In Waterloo County, they had and that's actually on that first chart. They had 500 cases of abuse that were founded. Des Moines, the largest city in Iowa, only had roughly 150. So why are we going after the blacks so zealously? Well, they are in the poorer neighborhoods. There's blatant discrimination happening. There's also a founding rate of 77% of the people are neglect, and neglect or denial of critical care. That falls under the people who are in the poverty income levels. And I wanted to address that also because there's a problem with the fact that you use the studies DHS has come up with. Who does DHS study? Who are they helping? The poor. So their studies then turn around and say it is the poor who abuse their children. Well, that was like Freud studying the prostitutes and saying everything is about sex. Well, you have to have a broad spectrum in your studies. If you don't have access to the upper income levels families, you can't determine whether or not they're abusing their children, especially when you decide that, well, there's no denial of critical care because they have food, they have clothing. They back down quickly from the affluent families. The affluent families also have the ability to pay for attorneys to fight DHS. So DHS goes after literally the weaker people who don't have that ability to fight and who don't have attorneys who can tell them what their rights are.
Freud, you mentioned him. He did research, and I believe that was in 1900.
I don't know.
And DHS uses those statistics today against parents. And he abused children to get his statistics, isn't that correct?
Yeah, he did. Well, he abused prostitutes as well, and he targeted specific groups of people and then said this is what everybody's problem is.
Can you move your mic in closer?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's another chart that I had right here, which was regarding, also from the DHS website. It shows, contrary to what DHS publicly says, when they say we try to reunify children with their family in almost all of the cases, is it on the first page? There's a reunification chart there. This is one that John Harvey wants to address, so this one, Iowa is falling far, far, far short of reunifying foster kids with their families. And there's a national level, and the Iowa level is set at a higher rate than national. It's falling short. Over half of the kids are not being reunified with their families.
And what does that mean, not reunified?
When a child is removed through, because the DHS believes that there may be harm to the child, which lawfully they are not supposed to remove the child unless there is imminent danger to the child of harm, severe harm or death. They are not making efforts to get those children back with their families. They're keeping them in foster care, and they're adopting them to other families.
By the way, these are these charts represent the federal guidelines as far as the goals that they are to meet. To me, re-abuse is not really, in my mind, a significant statistic. It's what are they doing with the family all in all is far more important than to count as a statistic whether a child is re-abused. One strange thing is that they tried a program here where they were contracting out to a contractor, and the contractor had to meet these same guidelines, you know. Now the contractor was being paid bonuses if the children were not reported as being re-abused. Now, if you're being paid a bonus because of the low rate of reabuse, then what do you suppose will be your efforts when it comes to reporting reabuse? You're going to be reporting less reabuse, are you not? Otherwise, you are challenging your right to that next bonus.
Absolutely. One of the, I think you have it on, where the children are safe from care, or safe in care from abuse in Iowa.
Yes.
John had mentioned something to me about that because I just found it suspicious after having discussed with a number of people that have had their children removed and placed into foster care, have made statements to me saying that their kids come back with bruises, black eyes. One person's daughter came back, a 3-year-old came back with her arm in a splint. Her other daughter, who was either 4 or 5, came back with her leg in a cast. She had 4 children who were split up. The sons are in a different foster care home. And the 2 daughters, believe it or not, are with a former social worker who turned in the previous foster care parent because she wanted to adopt the girls. The boys are soon to be on their way to their 5th foster care family in 2 years. This chart says that 100% of the children in Iowa are safe from abuse in foster care. And John had more information on that.
Okay, there was a study done, and we've mentioned this on this program a few times, really, because I think it's so significant that in 1988 at the University of Iowa School of Social Work, Dr. Croft did a study on this and determined that a child in out-of-home placement was 8.4 times more likely to be abused than if left in his own home. Now, that is significant. Now, they come back and say, well, the character of these foster kids are such that they incur more abuse or invite more abuse. Well, that's foolishness because the foster care system should have an advantage far greater than any ordinary parent has. They have the training, they have the supervision. They can choose whether or not to put a child in a certain placement, and they can also remove that child from that placement. You see, all of those goes to protect a child, and now we find out that the child is worse off in out-of-home placement than they would have been if they had been in their own homes. So this means that state intervention is counterproductive. It's not good for children to be out of their home. Now, also, I think that you tend to watch out for your own. The mother cat that would go into the apartment and get her ears burned and her fur singed in order to rescue her litter of kittens. You see, she wouldn't do that for some other cat's litter, but she did it for her own. A dog in Florida watched her master bury her puppies in a box, and after the owner left, went and dug her puppies up out of the ground. Now that the dog probably wouldn't do that for some other dog's puppies, but she loved her own puppies enough to rescue them. 4 of the 5 puppies survived, and there were many individuals who wanted to adopt those puppies. I think there is a tendency for natural parents, in fact I think it's an overwhelming tendency for natural parents to give a lot more care and attention to their own than a foster parent. That's not to say there aren't some good caring foster parents that would go to extremes to watch out after their charges. But I think the chances are that a natural parent would be willing to give up far more than someone who is paid to do the job. Echo?
That actually leads into some more of the information that I've learned on foster care, both nationally and in the state of Iowa. We have a problem nationally with foster care being quote unquote, and this was from the counselor who helps with my son, because he suffered quite a bit of trauma just in the 1 week that he was not in his mother's care. And this is a year later, and he's still in counseling. Um, she specifically called foster care a broken system, because what happens is every child who is removed from their home automatically attributes that they have done something. As soon as a worker removes the child from the home, the first question in that child's mind is, what did I do wrong? Why am I being taken from home? They don't remove the abuser. In some cases, they tell the abuser to leave, and then they cite the abuser for abandonment of their children, which is absolutely ridiculous. You need to cite the actual abuse. In other, or the alleged abuser. I apologize, because this is before any evidence is ever presented. When you remove the child, they automatically believe they have done something wrong. So they are automatically feeling guilty for having committed something. They then go to a foster home, and in most instances, this is very unfortunate to say, the foster homes will turn around and say, well, you have very bad parents, and we're here to take care of you. When they say that, you are the product of your parents' genes. So you automatically now attribute your bad parents' genes as being yours, and you have no choice but you're going to grow up bad like your parents. And this is a psychological problem with teaching children your parents are bad. And then you have cases where foster homes teach the children that, well, you were taken away from your home. We know you're bad too, so this is your fault. And they perpetuate the problem. 50% of prisoners in Iowa have been through the foster care system. That right there says that the foster care system is not working. It's not helping our children. Nationwide, it's between 30% and 80%, depending on the state, of prisoners have been through the foster care system. When you realize that less than 1% of all children in our nation have been through foster care, and that significant number is in prison, it really has to make you stop and think. We have to stop children from going to foster care in the first place, because even leaving a child in an abusive home is far less traumatic on that child than it is to have suffered the trauma and then be ripped from everything familiar. When you know what tomorrow is going to bring, even if it's bad news, you can at least prepare yourself for it. When you are put into the unknown of no more relatives, no more school friends, no more of the same city, no more of the same parks that you liked, no more of your clothes. You don't get to take your clothes with you when DHS removes you. You don't get your favorite stuffed toy. You don't get your favorite blanket. And you may never see your brothers and sisters again. That rips your life to shreds far more than being in the same family and having somebody come in and help the family get better, educate the family, get them the alcohol care they need, the drug abuse care they need. Putting them in foster care is not working, and that's a nationwide problem.
You mentioned that you can't take their clothes with them. One reason is because the foster parent is allocated money, and they buy new clothes for the children every once in a while. And there's allocation for dental and health, other health. And so the list goes on. Oh, ice cream. When the social worker wants the children to say something negative against the parents, they'll offer them, take them out to Dairy Queen or Pizza Hut. All the niceties of life the kids get, but not the love from the home once they're taken out of the home.
They also get their names changed, don't they, Don?
Yes, and what my daughter wrote and said, a name is an identity, and they stole it from her.
Uh-huh.
I do want to counter that because I hope to see a little balance with that because I don't want to place undue blame on foster families. Foster families actually don't get the huge amounts of money for one of the foster families that I knew of received, she took in 3 children to help them, and she was given $200 to clothe them for several months for 3 children. That's a lot of children and not a lot of money.
It's supposed to be $200 per child.
Well, she was not given very much, and if you consider $200 per child is not a lot of money for clothing and shoes and underwear and all of their immediate sudden needs. I mean, just a week's worth of clothes is $200. So,
but the money is out there, but the foster parent may not have known about it. This social worker didn't tell her, hey, in the law you can get this money and this money and this money.
well, my thing with that is the money is staying with the administration. It's not going to the foster care people either. I mean, they're making money off of our children, but not near as much as an agency for taking them away. And I call it the sale of our children. They're selling our kids.
Sure. Marketing children.
Mm-hmm. And then with all of that, there's also the psychological trauma that happens on a family where a child is, removed, or where the stigma of being on a list of abusers when you know you are not an abuser is very, very, very shaming in Iowa. In any place in the world, it's very shaming. That's the scarlet letter walking around that says I'm a criminal, or the Star of David that says I'm Jewish in Nazi time. That's the the symbol where any society makes another society wear or mark themselves out separately. And I wanted to ask that you not feel ashamed for this, because this system did not operate the way it was supposed to. Some of our legislature, the laws made by the legislature of Iowa, were not constitutional. But if DHS took the time to follow the law as it was meant to be and not abuse the power that they were handed over, there would be far less problems in Iowa than there are right now.
What does a average employer think about it when the worker is found to be on the child abuse registry? How does the employers respond to that?
Well, it depends on the job you have. Not most, but a lot of employers don't have access to to the information that you're on an abuse registry. But any job that entails a security agency or working with children in any way, and I'm sorry, but a lot of jobs have working with children. If you're a teacher, a professor, if you're a school bus driver, if you're a psychologist for children, if you work with children in any way, if you're a cook in the kitchen at the school, you will lose your job. And that is wrong, because there was no court procedure. That, a hearing after the fact does not go back and fix the error that was made in the first place. So you may have already lost your job before you get the hearing. My hearing is in a year. So I can't go to work until that hearing, and that hearing may not determine, because I'm walking in there guilty trying to tell them I did not do what they're accusing me of.
Isn't there a law that says when you've got something on appeal, they can't not hold it against you? such as food stamps, if you appeal them taking food stamps away from you, you have a right to continue to get food stamps until the DHS can prove wrong.
Well, there are laws that are supposed to prevent all kinds of bias in the court systems, but um, this is why we're bringing a class action in Iowa, because of the incredible levels of bias in the system, and the direct ties with DHS and numerous judges in the juvenile court system. And I have to apologize because this is also happening in elder care in Iowa. If you're caring for your parents and some ambulance worker thinks that you didn't clean your house well enough, and he calls in as a mandatory reporter, you can also lose the care of your elder relative, and they will place them in a nursing home against their will, against the family's will, and the state will place a lien on that person's house to pay for all of this wonderful bill. So it's happening on both ends. I mean, I picture that a child has been taken out of taken out of their home, put in foster care, grows up, and when they become an elder, could you imagine having your children taking care of you, and suddenly here you go again. Now you're put in nursing home and not allowed to see your kids because supposedly they're abusing you. I mean, it's a vicious, vicious circle.
Okay, that brings up another thought. You mentioned the elderly in the nursing home. The whole issue is pertaining to class action, and the nursing home has connection to the class action. Elderly, could you tell us what is the categories of different things that people can come under in the class action?
Sure. The overall class action is when DHS has intervened in your life, intervened in your family, ordered you maybe to get rid of your boyfriend, ordered you to divorce your husband or your wife, ordered you to leave the house while the children are in their care, or else they'll take the children, and then they turn around and say, well, you abandoned your children, we had to take them. When DHS has investigated and through that investigation may have harmed your reputation, because they go to your work. They ask questions at work. They ask questions at school. They ask questions of your neighbors, oftentimes without your knowledge. Your reputation can be damaged. Any kind of harm that you may have suffered because of DHS, you can join that class action. It's not limited to children. It is also including elder care, or elders who are removed from your care. There are a lot of different groups. There are two class actions being brought by one attorney, who is Patricia Wengert. That is the child abuse class action, and the other one is the elder abuse class action, both being brought against the state of Iowa and DHS. Excuse me. And there are several other class actions that are coming forward also. There's Iowa Fathers group. There's a Hispanic group. There's an African American group being brought forward. There is a disabled group, because the disabled people are also more highly investigated than others. And of course, many disabled people are on Social Security benefits, again, poverty level. And then to heap upon that, an agency that says because you don't raise the children in a normal way. Well, what's normal? Just because one person doesn't have vision does not mean they are not capable of being parent. Because a person doesn't have hearing does not make them incapable of being parents. So the disabled group is coming forward. The non-custodial parents is with the Iowa Fathers group. There are foster children who are forced onto psychotropic drugs who are coming forward in a class action. We have a meeting coming up. Well, actually, it may be past that time, right? By the time this airs, I apologize. And then maybe we can discuss that in another interval. So.
But we will have future class action meetings talking about the DHS issue and how we're moving forward on that, so they can contact you or me and John for further information in the future.
Right.
Is this an email that people can contact you, Echo?
Yes. Anybody who has a DHS issue can contact me at Quails Echo, QUAILSECHOE @hotmail.com. I will answer the email. I'm very diligent about answering every day. To ask further questions about the class action or to possibly join the class action, you're very welcome to call or email, and I will get the information to you.
Is there any significant costs attached to entering the class action?
For the representatives of the class, that would be the people who are stepping forward and possibly testifying in a court. There may be cost as far as possible assessments against them if the case didn't win. There aren't costs to join the class action. There aren't costs to pay an attorney, but we are seeking donations to help keep the filing costs down, to help keep the fees down. We have a lot of groups that are helping with the funding, but all funding is very helpful.
Does this also, the class action, affect people that have disabilities such as blindness, hearing, language barriers?
Wheelchair barriers, sure. Well, language barriers falls under, again, another group. That would, like I said, there's a Hispanic group coming forward because Hispanics are targeted a little more in Iowa than other groups. If you want to do immigrants or recent immigrants, that could be another class action brought against DHS, and I'd be happy to help the group get that information on how to start their class action. So.
Everything we've been talking about all ties back into, have you been injured by the DHS, correct?
Yes, it does, yeah.
I know you don't know precisely what the shape of this outcome would be, but could you touch on some of the major things? How we know that we need some kind of protection for our children at a very minimal level, but how would it shape the agency from, and how would it be substantially different than what it is right now?
Well, hopefully this lawsuit will bring down the Child Protective Services part of this agency completely, because there really should be no government overseeing how a family raises its children or expresses its beliefs. When there are cases of valid abuse, if they are properly prosecuted, these cases should be brought in a criminal court of law. Abuse on a child is a crime. It is not a civil case. A civil case is a dispute between neighbors over the property line, or whether or not you can use that person's driveway. Can you walk across their lawn? Child abuse does not fall into that level. It falls into criminal activity. The other thing with taking that to a criminal court is there is a higher standard of evidence called for in the court, meaning this isn't because it could possibly be, or it looks like it might be abuse, that you are founded for abuse. It would be beyond a reasonable doubt that you should be founded for abuse or convicted as an abuser. And in that case, there should be intervention for the children with immediate counseling of outside agencies to DHS. People who are not contracted to DHS, so that it's not conflicting, because as soon as you're contracted to DHS, your interests are directly tied with, well, I hope DHS gets more children because then I will get more money from my agency. Um, we would like to see, contact your legislators, because they need to change these laws so that DHS can't abuse them. Your legislators are becoming more and more aware as more and more families are complaining to them. It's been over the last few years, and the legislators aren't moving because they're really not quite sure what to do. So contact your legislators, tell them, change the law, make the laws more inhibitive of abuse, get stricter definitions of what abuse is, not vague, broad terms.
Now, there's still going to be space for foster care and shelter care, and also for juvenile delinquents, is there not, in the law?
Well, the legislators, foster care wouldn't necessarily be taken down because that's not a direct child protective services thing.
Okay.
So, for children who would need the foster care, it would still be available.
What would it do in the courts? Because we've seen some of the terrible things happening because the courts are structured in such a way as to go along with what Department of Human... In fact, they seem to work more and more in conjunction with one another, not just cooperative, but actually as members of the same team, even though they're in different branches of government.
They don't just seem to work together. There's actually, there are committees where they are working on ways to, quote unquote, streamline. And this was the judge's minutes when she said our juvenile court is collaborating with DHS on how to speed these cases up through court. There are no family representatives on this is called the Polk County Model Court, by the way, the Iowa Model Court, which is supposed to be a court improvement project in Iowa. And instead of improving the court system, they've actually worsened it as far as justice goes, because they are directly working with DHS and going, so how do we help you guys get these cases through the court? And any parent who walks into the courtroom does not realize that there are 9 people representing the case against their one.
And they can afford to hire the best and the brightest. Sometimes they even get the brightest, not always.
Well, of course, they just got $2.3 billion
Sure.
last year
To protect our children in the courts
from their parents.
Yes, right. To bring down or to divide the family. And to actually create all kinds of job opportunities for a vast system of therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists, all kinds of people who are only too happy to take $300 or $400 an hour, to do, for instance, a visitation. If your child's in foster care, you have to pay somebody in order to visit your own child, which I think is an atrocity to use the term visit. What parent visits their child? That's not just a privilege. That isn't something that should be paid for. I think this class action thing is a very promising thing. It isn't something that Vocal initiated. Vocal has done things like this across the nation in times past, but I think this is an amazing effort on your part, Echo. We want to thank you for coming on board today and answering some questions and some bringing forth some statistics that tell us something about our servants serving in the Department of Human Services. Here's a couple of numbers maybe of interest to you. See you next week.